Sarah Mitchell pushed open the glass door of Murphy's Diner, letting the warm smell of coffee and bacon wash over her. It was 7 in the morning, and the small-town restaurant was already buzzing with the usual crowd. She walked to her favorite booth by the window, the same spot she'd claimed every morning for the past 3 weeks since returning home to Riverside, Ohio. The 42-year-old veteran still wore her hair in a tight bun, a habit from 20 years in the Army. Her uniform was replaced now by simple jeans and a plain sweater, but she carried herself with the same straight-backed posture that had earned her respect on 3 continents. "Morning, Sarah," called out Maggie, the owner, from behind the counter. "The usual?" Sarah nodded with a small smile. "Coffee, black. 2 eggs, scrambled. Wheat toast." She opened her laptop and tried to focus on her job applications, but the whispers started almost immediately. "That's her," she heard from the booth behind her. "The one who thinks she's so tough." "My husband says women have no business in combat," another voice added. "It's not natural." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't turn around. She'd heard it all before, the doubts, the mockery, the assumption that her 20 years of service, her 2 Purple Hearts, her Bronze Star, that none of it mattered because she was a woman. She'd lost friends in Afghanistan. She'd carried wounded soldiers to safety. She'd made decisions that saved lives and lived with the weight of the ones she couldn't save. But here, in her own hometown, she was just that woman who went to war. The door chimed again, and Sarah glanced up. A man walked in, tall and tired-looking, with dark circles under his eyes. He was probably in his late 30s, wearing work boots and a flannel shirt with paint stains on the sleeves. Behind him, 2 small girls followed, identical twins with dark pigtails and matching pink backpacks. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The man, David Harper, Sarah would later learn, looked around the crowded diner with visible anxiety. Every booth was full. Every table was taken. The twins pressed close to their father's legs, their eyes wide and uncertain. "Daddy, I'm hungry," one of them whispered. "I know, sweetie. Just give me a minute," David said, his voice strained. Sarah watched as David approached the counter. "Excuse me, is there any chance—" "40-minute wait at least," Maggie said, not unkindly. "Morning rush. You can put your name down." David's shoulders sagged. Sarah could see the calculation happening on his face. He was probably already late for work. The twins were hungry. 40 minutes was an eternity in a 6-year-old's world. The girls looked around the diner with hopeful eyes. Sarah noticed one of them was clutching a small stuffed rabbit, worn soft from years of love. The other held her sister's hand tightly. Then, the twin with the rabbit did something that made Sarah's chest tighten. She looked directly at Sarah's booth, seeing the empty seats across from her. The little girl whispered something to her sister. Then both girls looked at their father with pleading eyes. David shook his head firmly. "No, Emma. No, Lily. We can't bother people. We'll wait." But Emma, the braver of the two, had already made up her mind. Before her father could stop her, she walked over to Sarah's booth, her sister trailing behind. They stood at the edge of the table, 2 small figures with hungry eyes and hopeful faces. "Excuse me, ma'am," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we eat with you? We're really hungry, and there's no room." Sarah looked into those innocent eyes and felt something crack open inside her chest. These children had no idea she was a veteran, no idea she was the subject of gossip and judgment. They just saw a person sitting alone at a big booth, and they asked the simplest, most vulnerable question in the world. "Please," Lily added, her grip tightening on her sister's hand. "We'll be really quiet." David rushed over, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Girls, no. I'm so sorry, ma'am. They didn't mean to—" "Sit down," Sarah said quietly. David blinked. "What?" Sarah looked up at him, then at the twins, then back at him. "Sit down. There's plenty of room. It's just breakfast." Part 2. The weight of a simple meal. David hesitated, his hand on Emma's shoulder. Sarah could see the pride warring with necessity on his face. He didn't want to accept charity from a stranger, but his daughters were hungry, and he was clearly at the end of his rope. "Are you sure?" he asked. "We don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Sarah said, closing her laptop. "Please, sit." The twins scrambled into the booth before their father could change his mind, sliding across the worn vinyl seats with relief written all over their small faces. David sat down more slowly, positioning himself on the outside as if ready to grab the girls and leave at the first sign they were unwelcome. Maggie appeared with her notepad, her eyebrows raised slightly at the new arrangement. "Well, isn't this nice? What can I get for you folks?" Just some water for now," David started, but Sarah cut him off. "4 orders of pancakes," Sarah said firmly, "with bacon, and orange juice for the girls. Coffee for him." "I can't let you," David began. Sarah fixed him with the same look she'd used on subordinate officers who questioned her orders. "It's done." David closed his mouth, his jaw working. He looked down at his daughters, who were staring at the table with wide eyes, clearly unused to such abundance. Finally, he nodded. "Thank you. Really. I'll pay you back." "Don't worry about it," Sarah said. For a few moments, silence settled over the booth. The twins whispered to each other, their voices too low to hear. David stared at his hands, calloused and paint-stained. Sarah could see the shame in his posture, the weight of a father who couldn't provide the simplest things for his children. She knew that weight. She'd seen it on the faces of fathers in villages across Afghanistan. Men who wanted to protect their families but found themselves powerless against forces beyond their control. "I'm David," he said finally, looking up. "David Harper. These are my daughters, Emma and Lily. Sarah Mitchell." "The pancakes come with lots of syrup, right?" Emma asked suddenly, her shyness forgotten in the face of impending breakfast. Sarah felt her lips twitch into a real smile, the first one in days. "Mountains of syrup." "Good," Lily said solemnly. "Syrup is the best part." The food arrived quickly, and Sarah watched the twins dive into their meals with the single-minded focus only truly hungry children possess. David ate more slowly, and Sarah noticed he kept glancing at his watch. "Late for work?" she asked. He nodded. "I've been late 3 times this month. The school bus doesn't come until 8:15, and I need to be at the construction site by 7:30. My neighbor usually watches them until the bus comes, but she's sick today. I thought I could get them fed quickly and drop them off at school early, but..." He didn't need to finish. The morning had gone wrong, as mornings often did for single parents trying to do everything alone. "What happened to their mother?" Sarah asked, then immediately regretted the question. "Sorry, that's none of my business." David was quiet for a moment, watching his daughters eat. "Cancer, 2 years ago. She fought hard, but..." He shook his head. "It's just us 3 now." Sarah felt the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came with witnessing someone else's grief. She'd seen enough death to know there were no right words, no comfort that actually helped. Just the fact of loss, sitting between people like a stone. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "Me too," David replied. Behind them, Sarah heard the whispers starting again. She caught fragments of conversation from nearby booths. "Pathetic. Can't even feed his own kids." Single father. What did he expect? "That's David Harper. Lost his wife, lost his job at the factory. Now he's barely scraping by." Sarah saw David's jaw clench. He heard them too. His shoulders hunched forward, and he stared at his plate with the expression of a man who'd been kicked while he was down so many times that he'd stopped trying to get back up. Emma and Lily seemed oblivious, focused entirely on their pancakes and bacon. But Sarah noticed how tightly Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, how Lily kept glancing at her father's face as if checking to make sure he was okay. These little girls were carrying weight too, the weight of a lost mother, the weight of knowing their father struggled, the weight of being hungry and having to ask strangers for help. Sarah thought of all the people she'd helped overseas, strangers in foreign countries who needed protection, who needed someone to stand between them and danger. She'd done it without hesitation because it was her duty, her calling. But here, in her hometown, she'd been so wrapped up in her own wounded pride, in the whispers and the judgment, that she'd almost missed these three people who needed help right in front of her. "Listen," Sarah said, making a decision. "I've got time this morning. I can take the girls to school for you." David's head snapped up. "What? No, I couldn't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Sarah pulled out her phone. "What school?" "Riverside Elementary," David said slowly. "But you don't even know us. Why would you—" "Because they asked if they could eat with me, and I said yes," Sarah replied. "And because 20 minutes out of my morning isn't going to hurt me, but it might save your job." Part 3. The Woman Who Stood Alone. David stared at Sarah as if she'd just offered him $1 million. His eyes were bright with emotion, gratitude, disbelief, and something that might have been the first hint of hope he'd felt in a long time. "I don't know what to say," he managed. "Say okay and finish your breakfast," Sarah replied. "Okay," David whispered. Then louder, "Okay. Thank you." Emma and Lily looked up from their plates, syrup on their chins, understanding that something important had just happened, even if they didn't quite know what. "Is the nice lady taking us to school, Daddy?" Lily asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Miss Sarah is going to drive you this morning." "Cool," Emma said, then returned to her pancakes with renewed enthusiasm. David pulled out his phone and showed Sarah the school address, then gave her his number. "Please, call me when you drop them off, just so I know they got there safe." "Of course," Sarah said. They finished breakfast in more comfortable silence. David checked his watch again and stood reluctantly. "I have to go. Girls, you be good for Miss Sarah. Best behavior, understand?" Both twins nodded seriously. David leaned down and kissed each daughter on the forehead, then straightened and met Sarah's eyes. "I can't thank you enough. Really? This job. It's all I've got right now." "Go," Sarah said gently. "We'll be fine." After David left, Sarah paid the bill, ignoring Maggie's knowing smile. The owner had watched the whole interaction with approval. "That's real nice what you're doing," Maggie said as Sarah handed her cash. "It's just a ride to school," Sarah replied. "It's more than that, and you know it." As Sarah walked out with the twins, one on each side, she heard the whispers again. But this time they were different. "Did you see that? She bought them breakfast. That's David Harper's kids. Poor things. Well, at least someone's helping them." Sarah buckled the girls into her old truck, making sure their seatbelts were tight. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit in the front seat while Lily sat in back, humming softly to herself. The drive to Riverside Elementary took 15 minutes through quiet morning streets. Sarah found herself asking the girls about school, their favorite subjects, what they liked to do. Emma loved art class. Lily loved math. Both of them loved recess, obviously. "Do you have kids, Miss Sarah?" Emma asked. "No," Sarah said. "Just me." "Why not?" Sarah smiled at the direct honesty of childhood questions. "I was in the army for a long time. I traveled a lot. There wasn't time for a family." "Were you a soldier?" Lily asked from the back seat. "Yes." "Like Captain America?" Sarah laughed, a real laugh that felt good in her chest. "Something like that, but not quite as exciting." "I bet you were brave," Emma said confidently. Sarah glanced at the little girl, this 6-year-old stranger who believed in her without question. "I tried to be." She pulled up to the school drop-off line, and both girls unbuckled and gathered their backpacks. Before they got out, Emma turned back and hugged Sarah suddenly, fiercely around the neck. "Thank you for the pancakes," she whispered. "We were really, really hungry." Sarah's throat tightened. She hugged the little girl back. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Lily hugged her too, Then both girls scrambled out and ran toward the school entrance, waving back at Sarah before disappearing inside. Sarah sat in her truck for a moment watching them go. She felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Useful. Needed. Like she'd made a difference, even in some small way. She called David as promised. He answered on the first ring. "They're safe," Sarah said. "Just dropped them off." "Thank you," David said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "Thank you so much. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. Let me at least buy you coffee sometime." As a thank you, Sarah hesitated. She wasn't looking for friendship or anything else. She was still trying to figure out how to live in this town that didn't seem to want her. But she remembered Emma and Lily's faces. She remembered David's exhaustion and his determination to keep going for his daughters. "Sure," she said. "Coffee sounds good." Sarah drove back through town, past the diner, past the small shops and houses she'd known her whole childhood. This was supposed to be home, but it felt like foreign territory. The people here saw her as an oddity, a woman who'd stepped outside what they considered proper. She'd commanded troops. She'd made life-or-death decisions. She'd been trusted with millions of dollars of equipment and the lives of soldiers under her care. But here, she was just Sarah Mitchell, the woman who'd never married, never had kids, and wasted 20 years pretending to be something she wasn't. That afternoon, Sarah went to the grocery store. She was standing in the cereal aisle when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Well, if it isn't our local hero." Sarah turned to find Rita Henderson, a woman she'd gone to high school with. Rita had married young, had 3 kids, and seemed to think that made her an expert on life. "Hi, Rita. I heard about this morning," Rita said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Buying breakfast for David Harper and his kids. That's real charitable of you." "It was just breakfast." "Still trying to prove something, Sarah." Rita stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We all know why you joined the army. Couldn't find a husband, couldn't settle down like a normal woman, had to go play soldier." Sarah felt the anger rising in her chest, hot and familiar. But she'd learned control over 20 years of service. She'd faced enemy fire with less emotion than she felt right now, facing this small-minded woman in a grocery store. "I joined the army to serve my country," Sarah said quietly. "That's all." "Sure you did. And now you're back trying to play savior to every hard-luck case in town. David Harper doesn't need your pity. He needs to man up and take care of his own kids." Sarah stood in the grocery store aisle, her hands clenched at her sides, Rita Henderson's words hanging in the air between them like poison. 20 years ago, Sarah might have snapped back. She might have let her anger show. But war had taught her something valuable. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Some people weren't worth the energy. "Have a good day, Rita," Sarah said calmly, turning back to the cereal shelf. Rita made a small, huffing sound and walked away, but not before saying loud enough for others to hear. "Some people just don't know their place." Sarah finished her shopping and drove home to the small rental house she'd found on the edge of town. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a yard that needed work. But it was hers, and it was quiet. That evening, her phone rang. David Harper's name appeared on the screen. "Hello? Miss Sarah? It's David. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I have a huge problem." His voice was tight with stress. "My neighbor, the one who usually watches the girls in the morning. She's going to be out for 2 weeks recovering from surgery. I don't have anyone else, and I can't lose this job. I know I have no right to ask, but..." "I'll do it," Sarah interrupted. "What?" "I'll watch them in the mornings, until the bus comes. It's not a problem." David was silent for so long that Sarah thought the call had dropped. "Why would you do that?" he finally asked. "You don't even know us." Sarah thought about that question. She thought about Emma and Lily's faces at the diner. She thought about the way they'd hugged her. She thought about feeling useful for the first time since coming home. "Maybe I need you as much as you need me." she said honestly. And so it began. Every morning for the next 2 weeks, David dropped the twins at Sarah's house at 7. Sarah gave them breakfast, nothing fancy, just cereal and fruit and orange juice. They did their homework at her kitchen table. They told her about school. They asked her questions about everything. Emma wanted to know about all the countries Sarah had visited. Lily wanted to know if Sarah had ever been scared. All the time, Sarah told them honestly. But you did it anyway? Lily asked. I did it anyway. The twins became fixtures in Sarah's life. She found herself buying the cereal they liked, keeping juice boxes in her fridge, learning which stuffed animals went with which twin. Emma's rabbit was named Sprinkles. Lily had a small elephant called Peanut. David picked them up every evening at 6, always apologizing for being late, always offering to pay Sarah. She always refused. You're helping me too, she told him. I needed something to do. You're not doing something, David said one evening, standing in her doorway while the girls gathered their things. You're saving us. You know that, right? Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Around town, the whispers changed. Sarah heard them at the grocery store, at the post office, at Murphy's Diner. She's watching David Harper's kids every morning. Nice of her, I suppose. Still strange, though. A woman like that, never married, playing house with someone else's children. Sarah tried not to care. She tried to focus on Emma and Lily, on their bright chatter and their endless questions. But the judgment wore on her, a constant weight. Then, on Friday of the second week, everything changed. Sarah was at the hardware store buying supplies to fix her leaky faucet when she overheard a conversation. Two men stood in the next aisle, their voices carrying. Did you see the job posting at the factory? One said. They're hiring again. About time. They've been short-staffed since they let Harper go. He's lucky they didn't press charges. Sarah froze. Yeah, well, stealing is stealing. Doesn't matter what sob story you have about sick kids. Sick wife, wasn't it? Whatever. Point is, he got caught with his hand in the till. They gave him a choice. Resign quietly or face prosecution. He resigned. Sarah's mind raced. David had told her he'd lost his job at the factory, but he'd never said why. She'd assumed it was layoffs, downsizing, the usual corporate cruelty. But theft. That evening, when David came to pick up the girls, Sarah asked them to play in the yard for a few minutes. Then she turned to David, her arms crossed. Did you steal from the factory? She asked bluntly. David's face went pale. He looked at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at Sarah. Who told you? Doesn't matter. Is it true? For a long moment, David didn't answer. Then, quietly, yes. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. Disappointment? Betrayal? She'd trusted this man. She'd opened her home to his children. Why? She asked. David's hands clenched into fists at his sides. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. My wife's cancer treatment. The insurance denied most of it, said it was experimental, not covered. We were drowning in medical bills. The girls needed food, needed clothes. The house was about to go into foreclosure. He took a shaky breath. I took $300 from the petty cash over 2 months. $300 to buy my daughter's groceries and keep the lights on while I watched my wife die. They caught me on camera, gave me the choice, resign or go to jail. So you resigned. What else could I do? If I went to jail, what would happen to Emma and Lily? They'd already lost their mother. I couldn't let them lose me too. Sarah stood in silence, processing this information. The black and white of theft versus need. The gray area where desperation lived. You should have asked for help, she said finally. David laughed bitterly. From who? I asked everyone. The church said to pray about it. My family lives out of state and has their own problems. Friends disappeared when things got hard. This town, he gestured vaguely. This town judges first and helps never. Sarah knew he was right. She'd felt that judgment herself, in different ways. Part 5. The power of standing together. Sarah lay awake that night, David's confession running through her mind. She'd seen soldiers make impossible choices in war, decisions with no good options, only less terrible ones. David's choice to steal to feed his children while his wife was dying fell into that category. It didn't make it right, but it made it human. The next morning was Saturday. Sarah heard a knock on her door at 8 o'clock. When she opened it, Emma and Lily stood on her porch without their father. "Where's your dad?" Sarah asked, concerned. "He's in the truck," Emma said. "He told us to give you this." She held out a folded piece of paper. Sarah took it and unfolded it. David's handwriting was cramped and hurried. "Sarah, thank you for everything you've done for us. I know you heard about what I did at the factory. I understand if you don't want us around anymore. You've been kinder to my daughters than anyone in this town. I won't forget that. If you want us to leave you alone, I understand. Just send the girls back, and we'll go." Sarah looked at the twins standing on her porch. Emma clutched Sprinkles tightly. Lily's eyes were worried. "Is Miss Sarah mad at Daddy?" Lily whispered to her sister. Sarah's heart broke a little. She knelt down to the girl's level. "I'm not mad at anyone. Go get your father. Tell him to come inside." The girls ran back to the truck. A moment later, David walked up her path slowly, like a man heading to his execution. "You don't have to explain anything else," Sarah said as he